Hello, my friends, and welcome to The Mill. I'm your host, Dusty Crane. This week, I have a very special guest, Ryan Lopez, the co-designer of Scythe, the Raisa Fenris. As I started to edit this interview, I realized I'm a terrible interviewer. I totally didn't introduce him. See, I met Ryan a couple of years ago at Gen Con, and he's a great guy, and we talk regularly in a group of other people that have met each other at Stonemaier and Gen Con through Stonemaier. And so it kind of felt like I was just calling up a friend and talking on Zoom. So it was far more relaxed than I think maybe it should have been. Like, maybe I should have done more like introduction and more welcome. I don't know. I'm not going to go ahead and record a whole big apologies up front, but it's a great interview. It's long because I had a ton of questions, and Ryan is just a very gracious person to interview and talk to, very generous with his time, and so I want to thank him with that. But I'm really excited for you guys to see what we put together for you. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring you right into the interview. You guys take care. Well, thanks for coming on The Mill.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is weird because I know you're a super tall guy, and I look taller than you on my screen.
Here, hang on just a sec. There we go.
Oh, okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, like I'll just look up.
I'm getting used to slouching down on my camera, or in my Zoom meetings, So.
Right. Well, that's cool. So, obviously we put out some questions to Board Game Geek and to, the Mill crowd and Facebook, and there's a ton of questions for you. They want to know all about Raisa Fenris. So yeah, you want to get into those?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So what I kind of did is I kind of broke it up into non-spoilers and spoilers, I think. So I'm going to do the non-spoiler stuff. Yeah, I'll do my best. The non-spoiler stuff up front, and then,
sure.
We'll go into the spoiler stuff. So the first non-spoiler question I have here is, and maybe it's spoiler now, we'll see, but it says, what are some things that you really wanted to do or have in the game during playtesting that didn't end up working for the end result?
Oh, geez. One of them I talked about in one of my other design diaries. It's up on Board Game Geek, and it's kind of spoilery, so I don't know. Maybe we'll come back to that later. Okay. One of the things that I threw out early on, because I was just at the beginning just throwing stuff against the wall, excuse me, and seeing what would stick. And Jamie would basically come back with, yeah, pursue that, or no, I don't want to do that. So there was a lot of that for the first month or so. And one of the things I threw out there was a notion of including new faction mats that were blank. Okay. And then players would customize them as they went along. So like you would add mech abilities and things like that to your faction mat, sort of legacy-ish kind of thing, like a customizable faction mat. Basically. Yeah. It would still be themed to, Polania or Rusviet or whatever. Yeah. But Jamie very quickly was like, look, I already did. He was still in the final stages, I think, at this point of the playtesting and stuff for Charterstone.
Yeah.
And he was just like, no, I don't want to do it. There's nothing permanent, nothing legacy, nothing like that. So, that was one of, I don't know, probably a dozen things I had thrown out in an email. And that would have been neat, but I totally understood why you didn't want to do it. And it would have been a huge amount of work. So I don't necessarily, but that's something that was, we toyed around with throwing into the campaign. Another thing, actually, there's a couple things. I forgot. Another thing I thought about early on was the notion of like side missions. So like if the main campaign is whatever 8 or 10 missions long, as it turned out to be 8, but there could be like some here you're gonna if Rusviet's in the game, you can play the side mission for Rusviet.
Yeah.
Or if Nordic is in the game, you can play this side mission bonus. Totally optional. We'd have little stars in there saying, hey, you can skip this one if you want. It's not part of the story. It's a side thing. Just to sort of build out the world.
Yeah.
And we thought about that. And ultimately, we decided against it because we decided ultimately, like, shorter's better, right? And I think that the fan feedback on the game has been that 8 was about the right length. Any longer would have been a little long.
Yeah.
So We
That,
didn't throw that in. Sorry.
that does kind of tie into one of the questions that had come up just I think in Facebook last night, and they were talking about, have you thought about a faction specific campaign, which is kind of what you were talking about with the side ones, like 5 episodes where maybe you play as Tagawa versus the Automa, which I thought, well, that's kind of getting into the weeds there a little bit, but
right, yeah.
But yeah, that was a cool idea that, yeah, if you have Polania in the game, that this is, you know, something that's specific to them. That would have been cool to kind of flesh that out.
Yeah, that would have been an easier version of another thing we thought of, which was faction specific, like encounter decks or mission cards.
Yeah.
So every faction would have like a story arc to unfold in the form of these cards. And we were trying to decide, would they be like organic, which would be a little more generic and a little less unique to the factions, or it'd be like, hey, you've got the story, and we're gonna sort of reveal card 1 when you complete it, go on to card 2, blah 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 blah, or an encounter deck or whatever. Or would it be like the organic one would be like just reveal a card and then do that thing and then do the next card and the story would emerge? Or would it be scripted, like, hey, we're going to have these steps that you have to follow to get through, but it'll be the same more or less every time?
Right.
And we tossed that idea after about maybe a week of working on it, because we're just like, oof, like the level to do that for each faction and the amount of work that was involved was just insane for basically flavor text that would also probably slow the game down a little.
Right.
And then on top of that, like I wanted to lock people into a faction. I am very firm on whatever you start the campaign with, unless the campaign says otherwise, you finish the campaign. Because I just like the story. I like to commit to a team, right? Like, that's my team, and we're going for it. But Jamie wisely didn't want to do that because he was correct. And I knew at the time he was. It's my thinking that people would want to change the faction occasionally. They get bored or whatever. I'm not that way. But and I get it. I totally understand why, though, you might get bored. And so all that kind of came together to be like, we can't really make a story arc that people can follow because they're going to change factions.
Yeah, factions changing and then how they interact with each other and stuff like that. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and in fact, like when my son and I were playing a game of Scythe Digital with my brother-in-law, and his second time playing the game, but first time playing Polania, he just could not figure out the strategy, and he just hated the entire game. He was not having fun. So yeah, I could see, like, if you got committed to a single faction for an entire campaign, you probably drop out before the end of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question was, did the artwork always precede the gameplay and narrative, or what was the sequencing of those events for the various modules?
The narrative thing is kind of interesting. I did see there were a couple of questions about narrative. The narrative thing is kind of interesting because the artwork always preceded the game, but there's not a ton of new artwork, I don't think. You'd have to ask Jamie this for sure, but I don't think there's a ton of new artwork in Fenris itself. There is definitely some, particularly in the rule book. I don't know that there are really any new cards, really. So, like, there's not a lot of new artwork, well, with one exception. But what I was given was Jakob had sent Jamie, who forwarded to me, a page and a half, slightly less than 2 pages outline of the story of the world he was building. And that story was basically built around Anna and Olga, because they are, as you may know, the protagonists of Jakob being Polish. Anna is his protagonist, and then Olga is the sort of Russian antagonist of this world. And then to a lesser extent, Gunther from Saxony was in there. He's sort of a third character. And you'll note, it's probably no small coincidence that in Iron Harvest, those are the 3 factions that were initially advertised. I haven't checked into it recently, but so he sent me sort of a story with that. And then, without getting into spoilers, there are some other perimeter characters that get brought into the story who are new to the storyline of Scythe 1920 plus. Those are new characters in the story arc that are brought up during the campaign, and all of those characters, all of that stuff was from his notes. And then I just went through and wrote the story. And I did draw, I have the art book from the original Kickstarter campaign. I went through the art book. There are definitely scenes that were inspired by specific paintings in the art book. Like, there's a scene in the backstory where the ambassador brings the auto machine to the Emperor of Saxony, and that's illustrated in the art book. And that I I was looking at that picture as I was writing that scene and trying to kind of evoke what is this scene, you know,
That's
what's
cool.
happening here. So that kind of stuff. But largely the story for the actual campaign comes from those notes, just a couple pages. The actual story written out totaled about 11 or 13 single space pages.
Yeah.
But you know, that was a lot of just building on the notes that Jakob sent. And then I sent the story to Jamie. Actually, side fact, the story I wrote, I couldn't get the campaign to feel cohesive on my own. And so I actually sat down one day after spending a month or two on it. I sat down one day and just started writing a story. I need to know what the story is. I was trying to make the scenarios and then put story over the top of those.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just disjointed and weird and just didn't work. So I just sat down and wrote a story, which I already done some campaign scenario design. So there was a little bit of sort of interweaving of ideas there. But I wrote the story mostly like an actor might do character background, you know, like this isn't going to be in the movie. It's just like, so we know, so I know as a character. Right. And for Jamie and myself, just to sort of know, here's what's going on. And I sent the story to Jamie, who sent it to Jakob just to make sure we're on the right track. And Jakob came back, really, really liked it.
Yeah.
Jamie really liked it. And then Jamie decided to include the story. It was kind of his call. He decided to include it in the rule book. And so, I mean, I cut some things and edited some things, but the story actually originally wasn't, I expected us to pare it down quite a bit. And then we used most of it, really.
There was, you know, especially when you look at the prologue, there is a great deal of, before you even start the game, that story. And it does really kind of set the tone for the whole campaign. So I really did enjoy, you know, sitting down before game one and just laying out that story and reading it. And it was, you get all psyched up to play some Scythe.
Yeah. Well, and that, I actually had hoped we could release that prologue at least as a digital thing, if nothing else, because a lot of people had been wanting background, and I had those notes from Jakob, and I kind of had those notes from Jakob. The stuff from the prologue is largely that, right? Like the idea of Tesla creating the mechs, them getting used, him sort of just like melting down over this. All of that prologue stuff is from his background, but people don't know. A lot of people didn't even know Tesla was involved, although it is mentioned in the art book. Like it's part, I don't think it's in the original rule book, but it's in the art book. Like it's been a part of the story from the beginning, but a lot of people didn't know that. And so I knew people would like to see something in whatever version I could offer. I was terrified I was going to like Phantom Menace this thing and just make everyone angry. And I'm pleased to see I don't think that happened. It definitely could have been better. I probably could have spent more time revising the story, but we were mostly focused on the gameplay, you know? So, but I definitely was a little nervous for a while there.
Yeah, you know, and it's cool that you were able to get that bounce back off of Jakob and see how that fits into his world. I haven't watched or looked. I watched some gameplay from Iron Harvest, but I haven't, you know, downloaded the demo or anything like that.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Man, I would be so interested to see if like any of the stuff that you wrote kind of gets encompassed into his world of 1920 plus, if that is his version of canon now too.
Well, I actually have a small insight to that. I don't know, this is not particularly public, and I'm not going to say too much about it, but I was sent a translation, I think. Maybe it wasn't translation, but anyway, I was sent a script of an interview Jakob did, and talking about the 1920 plus world and talking about, like, I don't think it's any secret that he would like to have a movie or something made out of it.
Right, yeah, let's talk about that.
And without getting into too many details, reading that interview, I'd love to go look that up again. This was several months after I had sent him my story, and I don't know when the interview was done, but that's when I received it. Reading that interview, though, a lot of details in that interview were very close to what I had written in the story, some of which was not explicitly laid out in those details in the notes he sent me. And I don't know if it was just like a mind meld, like I just got into what Jakob wanted to say, or if Jakob liked what I said and sort of, I don't know. But there was a fair amount of similarity, not a ton, but, you know, like some surprisingly similar things between what he was saying in this interview and what I had written based on his notes. So it's kind of fun. It's neat.
Yeah, that is cool. The next couple of questions actually kind of tie in together, so I'll just loop them in together. It was, how was Raisa Fenris discovered, and how did you and Jamie become acquainted?
Yeah, that's, I mean, it wasn't, So what happened was I made a fan campaign, which I'm sure you're aware of that story by now, called Lessons of the Past. It's still up on Board Game Geek. I didn't get very far in revising it because I posted it in like late October, early November, 2016, and was hoping to get some user feedback. I had play tested some of the scenarios and stuff. I had worked with it a little bit, but I wanted to get like broader feedback than just me, you know. And people had been asking like, "Ooh, this seems like it'd be ripe for a campaign game." And I was like, "Sure, I could try that." For a story I won't get into right now. And then Jamie saw it, liked it, shared it to the Scythe Facebook group. Got some pretty good feedback, some downloads. But I don't think too many people did much with it, really. But, you know, it did generate some buzz. And then, like 4 months later, Jamie contacted me and said, that, by the way, you know, like, I'd like to talk to you. I had sent him an email, email on Board Game Geek independently, just to send in a little email message. And he came back to me with like, oh, and also, are you the same guy who did this campaign? And I was like, I'd like to talk to you about it. So, and I was going, I don't know what that means.
Right.
So I came back to yes, I was. What's up? And he sent me a lengthy email about his idea to make a campaign expansion for Scythe.
Right.
And eventually, like, you know, but I'm really busy, you know, I've got Charterstone, blah, blah, blah. And I can't do all the writing and stuff. And so that's how we got connected. It was kind of flukish. It's a product of Jamie's responsiveness to fans.
Yeah.
And I think his relative available time at that point, like it was his fourth game, I think, that Stonemaier published. He wasn't nearly as busy, I think, as he is now.
Right.
And so I think he had the ability to dive into some fan content and then to explore that. I think it's great that he was willing to bring me in because, like, he didn't know me. I could have just been a cuckoo, you know. Like, I could have been a pain in the neck person to work with. He didn't know, and he was really open and great. So that's how we met, and then we just started designing, and then, you know, the name and all that other stuff came much later.
Right. No, I think that's one of the things that I like about Jamie too is his approach to the fans, and that, you know, look what he did with you and with Kai and with Hobie and just, you know, Morton
was a fan.
You know, people that are interested in his stuff, and, you know, he sees something there, and there's I guess in that regard, you know, there's not ego. I don't know his ego working with them, but like in terms of just you know, just in terms of like, there's not the ego in that this thing that I made is precious to me and no one else can do anything with it. It's like, once it's out of my hands, it's yours. And so I think that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, he was great and easy to work with. And I think that, I don't know how easy it would be for me to do that. You know, if I had designed just some epic like size, I don't know how easy it would be for me to do.
It's a monster.
Sure, jump on board. Like, why not? Why don't you throw some ideas out there? Because we had very few interactions before that. So.
Yeah, that's kind of the story of the mill too. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of interactions, but ended up meeting up at Gen Con, and then shortly thereafter, I get a message, and, you know, the rest is history. So
yeah, at least you got to talk to him in person first.
Yes. Oh yeah, there's that for sure. All right. So the next question. Okay. So this one is kind of like, how do I become Ryan Lopez? Are you the kind of,
that is a dangerous road to walk down.
So, all right. Well, I mean, I think it worked out for you. So far, so good, right? So if you're the kind of person who likes to write a narrative story, what would your advice be for people to pursue? Pick a game you love and build out a story from it and hope the designer likes it and picks it up, or build the narrative from the ground up and find a publisher who wants to build a game around your idea. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I saw that question, and I think that's I'm not sure either of those are things that sorry, I'm trying to look up a Facebook group for this person as well, because I'm not sure either of those are how I would frame that. There it is. So I think the way I did it was such a unicorn experience, like such a fluke. Because you had to have a designer who was also a publisher, first of all. It's almost impossible, I think, otherwise. Like, a publisher is not going to go to like, if I'm your publisher and you've got a game that somebody had some great fan content for, I'm not going to be like, hey, Dusty, you want to work with somebody else on this? You know, like,
Right.
I just feel like I can't imagine somebody doing that. And if I'm a designer, maybe like I reach out to the publisher and be like, hey, I want to split the effort with this other guy and this other person and work on a game together.
Right.
I just don't know that would happen. I think you have to, as the designer publisher, he just bypasses all of that thinking.
Right.
And then he just goes straight to, this is interesting and I will do it because I have all the control.
Right.
And I just don't think that very many people are in a position to do that. And I also think that personality-wise, as we discussed earlier, I don't think very many people even in that position would do it.
Right.
You know, so I don't know that I would. I mean, I'm going to revisit that in just a minute. The other thing was to create a world and hope a publisher was willing to publish something. I don't see that going anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like if you're not gonna, I don't mean to be rude. I just like I don't see a publisher like, oh, I'd love to make it. Like again, Jamie's the exception because he's also the designer. He saw Scythe and said, I want to make a world out of this.
Right.
But he's the publisher and the designer. Like. Maybe somebody would want to pick it up, but then you have to have content out there somewhere. Like you have to have a way for people to find that, and that probably would take years at a minimum, right? And you're just generating. But if you like want to design the game, do the world building, have a narrative game, and then get a publisher to pick it up, that's a different thing. But then you're not just writing for games; you're a game designer.
Right.
You're both. But going back to like the publisher picking it up. Oh, what was I saying about that? Oh no, I'm sorry. Writing for fan. That's what it was. Writing fan work for an existing thing. I actually think it's a really great way to go. But like in the same way that I think creating fan expansions is a good way to sort of get your feet wet on game design, right? Like because you're working within constructs. Like I have other game designs I'm working on, and they're an enormous struggle and they're going nowhere. It's a lot of wheel spinning. You've been involved in some conversations I've had online about these, and there's a lot of wheel spinning, a lot of going back to the drawing board for the 17th time. And it's much, much harder for me than working on Fenris was for two reasons. One, Fenris was an existing product that worked, and all I had to do was add stuff without breaking it.
Right.
And that's, sorry, I forgot to close my window, so sorry about that noise.
No, it's fine.
So that's a different thing altogether than, I mean, I've had the question of, is this a drafting game or a tile laying game? Like if I want to do, like that's a foundational question you have to answer very early in a game design process, and you can't make the game, right? Yeah. And so, or is it both? But whatever, you have to make those choices. And so I think designing fan content is a really good way to go. I think doing like basically fan fiction for a game, I think it's an untapped market. I think it's a really interesting market. Probably a lot of people who dig it and a lot of people who wouldn't care for it at all. But who knows, right? That's an area where maybe somebody would catch on a little bit, if they want something to happen. But yeah, I just, I think that if you wanted to get into writing, I think there's probably another way that would be better. And the website I was going to suggest, not a website, there's a Facebook group called Writing for Games. It's just a book about people who are doing. So their about thing says a place for copywriters, authors, publishers, game designers, and anyone else interested in using words in games to share knowledge, ask for help, and discuss the industry. So if you're interested in that, you might try joining that group. Writing for Games and seeing what you can. I'm a member. I'm not active on it all, but I am in the group.
Is it directed right to board games, or is it board and video games?
I am so inactive on the group that I'm not 100% sure.
All right.
I believe it is largely board game focused. Looking at the thing here, it doesn't say immediately, but I'm sure it's a little of both. But I believe the posts that I have seen on it have largely been like board games, RPGs, that kind of like tabletop stuff.
All right.
There may be video game stuff too.
Well, cool. That's a good recommendation. All right. So another question is, if you could do an expansion for another Stonemaier game, which would you expand and what would be included in it?
I would do. That's a hard question. I wouldn't touch Wingspan for various reasons, not the least of which is Elizabeth clearly has that under control. Unless Elizabeth was just like,
she's got it firmly in hand. Yeah. It's doing pretty
Unless
good.
She's just like, I need a ton of help with this, and specifically invited me, but I don't see that happening because she's got her system, and I don't I don't even want to picture the spreadsheet. She's mentioned the spreadsheet. And I just can't.
We've heard about this spreadsheet. When everything is said and done with Wingspan, I really hope to see this spreadsheet. I'm so curious.
The 50,000 cell
Right.
column. I don't even know what that thing is. So no part of that. I think it would have to be Tapestry. That would be the one I'd be most interested right now in doing expansion content for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that would look like. I mean, obvious stuff is like new civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see. I don't know what's going on with the Tapestry expansions. I want to throw that out there right now. I'm not in on that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to see maybe some fun things done with the monuments or the landmarks. I guess they are the landmarks.
Yeah.
Where like maybe the second person to reach a landmark can get a benefit. Maybe you have like cards or something that you randomly deal out, and like the first person gets the landmark, but the second person gets, or subsequent players or whatever, get other benefits. For example, for reaching that landmark space, that kind of use the landmark in some way, and maybe even benefit the first player. But like the idea of like still encouraging you to advance on those tracks, even if you're not first. You know, so often I get skunked, and I'm just like, you know.
Yeah, right.
So something like that would be cool. Something like I would love to see like an additional like city map, like maybe a smaller one, maybe one that's just like a 3x3 or like a 3x5 or something like that, where it's another place to put buildings or landmarks or something like that for a different effect, right? Kind of like the bonus islands in Feast for Odin or something like that, where you have like extra decisions to make as far as where you put stuff or what you do with things. Those are a couple of thoughts that I had with that. That could be. That's just like I thought about that like a week ago, and I saw the question. And I thought about it for 20 minutes, and I haven't thought about it since. So I think I came up with a third one that I can't even remember now. But like, so who knows? They're probably full of problems and whatnot. But those are some things that I think would be kind of fun to do with Tapestry.
That would be, yeah. I think that would be cool. I like the idea of the secondary map too. Let's see here. Okay, so when you were in the process of designing Raisa Fenris, had you considered making it only a simple Scythe expansion, or was it planned right from the beginning to be campaign-like, legacy type, replayable? I guess you kind of answered that a little bit.
Yeah, it was campaign from the beginning.
Yeah, the lessons of the past, which was great too. It was lessons, right?
Lessons of the past.
Yeah, which was great too. I liked the writing in that one too.
That writing was definitely an afterthought, but
okay, so was the process more work than fun or more fun than work?
More fun than work, but it was a lot of work.
Yeah,
but it was fun work, right?
Right.
At the time I only had one child. My second son was born about 2 months after I finished, kind of wrapped up my part of the design work. And I have not been able to function in game design since then. Having two kids,
a lot of time.
and two is way harder. It is not twice as hard as one.
Hey, I did two at once.
It's rough. Oh, I can't even imagine.
Oh,
so my sister has twins too. I just can't fathom that.
You know, now my nephew ended up having twins, and I just laughed.
Yeah,
it maybe wasn't nice, but I was like, man. And it was my first experience with kids, so I was so grateful because I thought if I only had one, and then I was experiencing what I was experiencing with two, that it probably would have been a lot more difficult.
Yes.
But ignorance is bliss, as they say.
Yes.
To tie in another Stonemeyer.
Yeah, bliss. There you go. Ignorance is bliss. That's right. Yeah. No, I think it was mostly fun though, because it's kind of a break. I would like on the nights when my wife was putting our son to bed, for example, I'd just be working. Our first son's a terrible sleeper, which again, good to have for the first kid because you don't know any better.
Right.
So I'd sometimes look for long stretches where I could work while she was trying to put him to bed or whatever. And so it was a lot of fun, and it definitely was more fun than any of the design work I've been doing since then.
Yeah.
It's also great to have a safety net in the name of Jamie Stegmaier, right? Like you have whenever I have a problem, I just like shoot an email to Jamie and be like, "What about this?" And he's like, "Nah."
Yeah. That doesn't work with these new projects?
Yeah, it doesn't work so well. I don't know. He's not responding to all my questions about my game designs. He doesn't know anything about. So it was that made things go faster and like smoothed out a lot of the stressful spots. I think you have someone to bounce ideas off of. That's good.
I could see that. How long did it take to design Rise of Fenris?
We started in early February, and we pretty much wrapped it up by early January, so 11 months pretty much.
Wow.
And there are other stuff. That's like play testing and everything.
Yeah.
I want to say we did 4 waves of play testing on it. I could be wrong, but I think it was 4. And at that point, like the files and stuff were pretty much finalized by sometime in January. So about 11 months.
Not bad.
It was actually pretty quick. I felt like, for as much stuff as was in there.
Oh, for sure. And man, the stuff that's in there is fun. I can't wait to get to the spoiler thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so why are there no bagpipe references in the Raisa Fenris?
For those who don't know, I play the bagpipes.
Yeah.
My wife also plays the bagpipes. Actually, I was born and raised in a bagpipe band. My dad was the pipe major of a bagpipe band in Boise from the 60s until like the late 2000s.
So you didn't stand a chance.
Still in the band. I didn't stand a chance. People are like, I didn't know you were a musician. And I say, I am not. I play the bagpipes. But no, you know what? Honestly, I love the question. I didn't think about it. I've already got Connor. He's already in there.
Yeah.
I just didn't. It didn't occur to his bagpipe mechs that he has there.
Yeah.
I just didn't think about trying to squeeze something in. Should have.
If you broke it into the factions, I'm sure that would have made it.
Yeah. There you
go. Okay, so with the 11 months you put into it, do you play your own expansion, or are you fed up with it after you've spent all this time on it?
No, I play it if people want to. Yeah, I actually have not gotten to play very much outside the campaign. So I soloed the campaign when I first got it, and because I wanted to be familiar with the solo mode because I was going to Gen Con that year, and I wanted to be able to answer questions. So I soloed it, and I got a group of a couple of the guys together to plow through that summer that I first got it.
Yeah.
2018. And then I just recently, well, not that recently, 6 months ago or something, maybe, I don't know how long ago, but within the last year, I played it with some newer friends of ours who were gamers, and played through. I gave them a copy and played through with them, and that was fun as well.
That's cool.
So I've played through the campaign 3 times, but I've almost not played the non-campaign stuff hardly at all, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned rushing through it because right before Gen Con is when I got a copy, and so my son and I really enjoy Scythe, and so we just crushed through it, like just raced through that campaign. I'm like, I have to get through this campaign before I go to Gen Con because Scythe is huge and I could be spoiled, and I don't want to be spoiled. It's funny, like it's a TV show or something.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of funny too, though, because at Gen Con 2018, like basically the game released there, right? Champions, Stonemaier Champions got it a few weeks earlier. Most hadn't played through it yet. And then it wasn't hitting stores until like 2 weeks later. And so, like, I was there, like, trying to promote it, but nobody knew anything about it or who I was. So, like, I was at the Meeple Source booth, and Cynthia would be like, "Oh yeah, the designer's right over there if you want to talk to him." And they would look at me. I could see it register on their face that I wasn't Jamie.
Yeah.
And they'd just be like, "Okay," and like most of them would just keep walking. It was amazing. It was fantastic. No, it was exactly. No, it was great. It was exactly what I expected to happen.
Yeah.
Because that's just that's who I am. It's just like nobody knows. Like that's fine.
Right. Yeah. That's funny. Okay, what snack is best to consume during a game of Raisa Fenris?
Oh boy. I'm not a good snack person. I mean, I love snacks, but like. Carrot sticks, something that's not going to get your fingers greasy.
Right, yeah.
Game time. I'm not a good game snacks person. Like I like snacks, but I love it when like some cookies or something. It'd be great. Well,
we have kids, right? We don't want to have their snacks anywhere near our games. Yeah. Okay, so let's see here. Oh, here's a. Will you please design an expansion for viticulture?
No, I will not. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Viticulture is great. I like
Yeah.
viticulture a lot. I'm astonished at how much I like viticulture because wine is a less compelling theme. Like Wingspan. Like I like Wingspan. It's a great game, but like the bird thing didn't sell me on the game. I like the
Right.
art. Their art is beautiful. I've never been a big bird person. I appreciate birds, but like that's about it, right?
Yeah.
I don't, viticulture. Like I dislike wine. Like I don't enjoy wine at all, and so the fact that I like that game so much, despite the fact that the theme has no appeal to me whatsoever,
Right.
it's a fantastic game. But any game that was designed by Jamie and has an expansion by, I believe, Uwe Rosenberg does not need my fingerprints on it.
Right.
That game's that's fine.
It's got a pedigree.
Yeah, it's doing okay.
It's funny because I feel the same way about viticulture. The theme does nothing for me. I've never been taken by the romance or the Italy and the vineyards and all that. But it's just so mechanically, it's thematically perfect.
Yeah.
The grapes and the aging the grapes and the wine and the cellars, and man, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't play it for a long time, and I know people who love wine and would probably dig the game. I haven't had a chance to share it with them, but like non-gamers types. But no, yeah, the theme. The reason I didn't play it was because I was just like, I don't know, the theme's fine,
right?
But the game is great. So.
Yes, it is. What one game does not have a campaign variant but needs one? Maybe not needs one, but that you would like to see one for.
I don't know. Spirit Island, maybe?
Oh, that'd be a cool one.
I don't know, because I think of so many like Blood Rage doesn't make any sense because it ends in Ragnarok, three times.
Right.
Tapestry doesn't make any sense because it takes place over the course of thousands of years. Like how do you make a campaign out of a game that one game takes thousands of years?
Right.
Spirit Island could be a good one though. But that's the only one I could. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. Let's see here. Would be great if we could play some team versus team Scythe with alliances and trading. Any chance of that getting that into an expansion anytime soon?
I no. I think you could house rule it really easily though with the Desolation rules from Scythe.
Yeah.
This is not a big spoiler. I wouldn't delve into Desolation if you're not wanting to spoil things, because doing so will spoil the entire contents of the box, basically.
Yeah.
But inside Raisa Fenris, there's a Desolation module, it's called. It was almost entirely Jamie's. He just like dropped it on me one day. I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's a cooperative module, so your players are playing against the game. Your units can share spaces. Any unit on a space can use those resources. You can also, I want to say you can share resources from across the board too, right? So like, I don't have to ask permission if we're sharing the space, but if you've got all the metal over there, I can be like, hey, can I use some of your metal to build a mech, that kind of thing. So I think you could just modify those rules and just be like, all right, Dusty and I are a team, and Hobie and Josh are a team, and Dusty and I can share resources willy-nilly and share territories and go team versus team. We could even use the alliance tokens, right? We both have both of our faction abilities.
Right.
I think you could house rule something quickly with the rules included in Fenris.
Yeah, I think you could too. I think that's one of the coolest things about the Rise of Fenris is it really did. It felt to me like it was, all right, this is the end of Scythe and we've just handing over the tools.
Go play.
Here's the keys to the kingdom. You just make it whatever you want it to be.
That was a big goal that we had. We wanted to just like address as many of the concerns that people had as we could address, and just give people as many tools as we could give them to make Scythe whatever they wanted it to be. I mean, within the confines of the game, but customize it however you want.
Right. Yeah, I love that about it. So this one does kind of tip a little bit into spoilers, but he specifically asked for no spoilers. He said he just received his Rise of Fenris and noticed that there are 13 miniatures. He believes he can account for 12 of them, but he can't put his finger on the last one. Any hint without spoiling anything?
It's neat.
Yeah.
It's cool looking. It's a how about this? That last miniature has been people have accused other users on the Facebook group of spoiling that miniature. I don't even know how many times, thanks to
Right.
YouTube. Thanks to YouTube video links,
Yeah.
and yet you only know it's a spoiler if you know it's a spoiler. Like, you
Right.
would have no way of knowing it was a spoiler if people didn't say this is a spoiler. You'd
Right.
just be like, you might be confused why people were linking to this particular YouTube video. That would be the extent of it, and that has nothing to do with gameplay. It's
Right.
strictly aesthetic. I can't tell you what else. I can't tell
You're
you anything
right.
else without spoiling.
No, that's funny because I do remember somebody posting like something from the base game of Scythe, like just an image, and then people getting upset about it. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, that's
since the
right.
start. It's been there since the
Yep,
start.
that's right. There's one of those too. Yep.
Okay, so what should a person who's never played the Raisa Fenris know about?
I don't know. It's neat.
Yeah.
It's an 8-game campaign. It has 11 modules that will allow you to largely mix and match, and as we just discussed, kind of customize Scythe to whatever your preferences are. There's a spoilery thing I want to talk about with that, but I won't right now. And it's a ton of content. I really do think it's. I mean, I know I have a vested interest in it, but I really think it's one of the higher content expansions out there as far as just amount of content bang for your buck kind of thing. It is expensive, but like, there's a lot of stuff in that box, man.
Oh, I
Even
agree.
if you don't play the campaign, I think there's a ton of stuff in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And none of it feels like fluff. Like none of it feels like tacked on. Like sometimes you get an expansion and you're like, oh, this was just like an afterthought. They just kind of threw this in. Everything about Raisa Fenris feels thought out and intentional and insignificant. Like nothing feels like it was just like, oh, well, we'll just toss this in the box.
Yeah, I can see feeling some things might feel fluffish if you don't do the campaign. But I think if you go through the campaign, everything feels pretty well connected, at least. And
right.
you may not like everything. You're not going to like all 11 modules. That's almost certain. You know, I'm sure that most players will have 1 or 2 modules where they're just like, whatever.
Yeah.
That's fine. We didn't expect everyone to like all of them. We just want you to like several of them. You know?
Right.
So.
Most.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, this one you know is coming because this one came from Josh. Who is your
nuts.
favorite non-Stonemaier game designer and your favorite game by them?
Okay. Josh, I'm getting my tablet out. Hang on. So I don't think I can answer the question, honestly. Yeah. I mean, the closest is probably, it's played out as the answer is probably Eric Lang. Mm-hmm. But the problem I ran into, I messaged Josh about this, as you saw, chastising him for giving me this question. The problem is I don't play a ton of games from any one designer. I play games from lots of different designers, and I don't really have too many designers where I'm going, they're making a game, I'm paying attention, right? I don't have a lot of those designers in my life. So I will say a few designers, and I say this with the caveat, I don't play a lot of games from single designers. So it's usually based on the play of 1 or 2 of their games. Mm-hmm. A few designers I really have been, I really like, and I at least pay attention to. I looked up how to pronounce his name. David Turtzi, I think is what it is. Turtzi? Anyway, who did Anachrony, Tricarion, I believe. And I think he also designed, did he also design Cerebria, the other Minecraft game?
I think so.
And he's done solo modes for a bunch of things. He did, was it Dice Settlers or something like that? Anyway, he's a really good designer, but his games are super heavy, so I can only handle 1 or 2 of those in my brain. Yeah. Anachrony is amazing, but so probably David Tursi, Eric Lang, those are big ones. I mean, I have other games that I love, but they're not. So,
right.
I'm going to take a second just to boost a few games that are sort of obscure that I really like.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell people about Rurik, Dawn of Kiev by Peacekeeper Games. It's Stanislav Kordonsky, I think, is the designer. He's a Russian designer. Really cool little area control type game. This is very unique, very unusual. Chimera Station by Mark Major from TMG. Awesome worker placement game.
Yeah.
With customizable workers. I love it. It doesn't get any discussion whatsoever. It came out right after Yokohama, which is like the biggest game.
Right.
Yokohama's great, but people know that one.
I have a friend who loves Chimera Station.
Oh, it's so good. I love it. I adore it. I actually made a solo variant for it because I like it so much, just so I can play it more. And so
That's cool.
it's good. It's flawed, but I don't. Nobody cares and nobody plays it. So I haven't had the incentive. Yeah, I haven't had the incentive to iron out the last 10%.
Right.
But the 90% is solid. Those are a couple anyway. There's others, but those are a couple of really good ones that I love. So.
Well, that's awesome. I think we're just about to get into spoiler talk here. And so before we get into spoiler talk, I'll ask you one more non-spoiler related question. That is, what is it really like working with Jamie Stegmaier?
Jamie Stonemeyer.
That's my daughter's fault. Let me tell you. Oh my gosh. Yeah. They have every name except for Jamie Stegmaier.